All right, in 3, 2, 1, and we're in. Steve Orton.
Adam Pritchard.
How you doing? How you been?
Yeah, very good, thanks. How are you?
Good. It's good to see you.
It's been a while.
I know. It's been a few weeks, hasn't it? And you are the CFO of a multi-academy trust in the Leicestershire area? Nottinghamshire area.
Nottingham and Derbyshire.
Okay, nice. And how's that working out for you? I mean, I should explain to anybody that's watching or listening that Steve and I have known each other since we were like 12, played on the same football team together, grew up together, went to school together.
Yep.
And what fascinates me and what I find exemplary about you and I love is that you took a very different route. I mean, we went to school at a time when the government were trying to get 50% of people into university, and you took a different route. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on how that went and how you got into it.
I actually stumbled into this career. We'd done A-levels, messed around a little bit, didn't try as hard as I should have done, as a lot of people do when you get into sixth form. I applied for university because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, if I'm honest, and it was I think it was a finance and business admin course at Montfort University. And I remember one Sunday afternoon, my grandma came round to visit, and she had an advert that she'd pulled out of Leicester Mercury for an apprentice at Leicester College. And I remember thinking, oh no, I don't want to do that, And I kind of felt a bit pressured into applying it. So I thought, I'd just keep everyone off my back. Applied for it, got offered the job, didn't really want to take it, took it again just for an easy life really, and then I've never looked back since. I studied AAT originally on day release, and was lucky enough then to be funded for my studies for CIMA again, which I got on day release. And after that, I completed a master's course at Montfort, and because I'd done my AAT and my CIMA, I got quite a few exemptions. So I ended up in the same position as what I may have done whilst been paid and getting that kind of real time experience. 100%. So yeah, I've got a lot to thank my grandma for.
See for your nan for. I mean, it's a smart move. I always think back to my decision to go back to university, and it was really just a placeholder. I liked the subject I was studying, but I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do. And I always think to myself, God damn, if I had my time again, I would not go to university. I would take an apprenticeship somewhere. But it's having that clarity, that focus, and knowing at that age what you want to do. Yeah. But I think school should gear you toward that ananyway. Right.
There isn't, if you think back to when we were at school, there's a lot of pressure on young people growing up to make a decision about their careers from an early age. And I think if I had my time again, I don't know where I would have gone. Yeah, well, I've got lots of grey hair. I don't know where my career would have took me, because it was almost.
And you finished in like record time, didn't you? Though you finished your CIMA in 18 months.
Yeah, I did it in 18 months, but again, a lot of that was the opportunities and the circumstances that I was working within it.
Because you were working at Leicester College, weren't you?
So I sat 3 exams at a time, all on day release. So I had much more time to focus on my studying than what the candidates may have. So yeah, 18 months, and I qualified.
And you went from Leicester College to where? The RAF, was it?
I went to an RAF charity based in Leicester again, is head of finance.
And you spent how long there?
I was there for just over 2 years.
Nice. And then?
And then I moved in, it was April 17. No, I'll tell a lie, it wasn't. I missed out a job then. I moved, I'm not sure when it was, but I moved to a multi-academy trust based in Nottinghamshire as regional head of finance.
So a multi-academy trust, for anyone that doesn't know what that is what?
It's a group of schools that have kind of joined together, working outside the local authority under their own kind of rules and structures and policies.
But they're still funded by...
But yeah, still publicly funded, but they're not accountable to the local authority like a maintained school.
So was that... I mean, my understanding of that is that academy schools arose. They became a thing because they were schools that weren't performing well, and it was judged that they would perform better if they had control of their own resources.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. Cynical people may say it was to take the the financial burden off the government's
Off the state.
purse.
Okay.
Schools are under or have been under a lot of pressure. School funding in the last 5-10 years is being cut in real terms by 10% plus. A lot of schools have got big deficits, a very challenging financial environment. So they're operating.
And by deficits, do you mean they've got negative balance sheet positions?
Negative reserves.
Okay, and negative reserves in the sense that obviously, so that they've got cash flow deficits. That's where I would go to.
Yeah, so they'd have cash.
They would have cash.
They would have cash. Not in all instances. If a multi-academy trust ran out of cash, the ESFA, which is the Education Skills Funding Agency, would step in and provide an emergency loan. But obviously, with that, there would be conditions. And in a lot of cases, that would lead to a financial notice to improve. What we're talking about is a non-cash deficit. So it's your kind of an accumulation of kind of historical losses in the P&L.
Okay. Cool. Well, obviously not very cool. So you went from multi-academy trust there.
Yeah. So that was
where you were what there?
That was a regional head of finance role, and I looked after two secondary schools in Northampton and a primary school, and I reported into the finance director, who was based in London.
So they had a finance director working remotely?
Yes, yeah, in London. That was a multi-academy trust of around 13 schools. I then came across an opportunity for a multi-academy trust based in Nottingham. I originally went for the role of CFO. I remember going to the interview, walking in, a lot of big hitters in there thinking, I've not got a lot of chance here. Help me relax and kind of...
no pressure?
I kind of felt the pressure was off really, and I could just kind of sell myself. Got down to the final two, and I was offered the role of vice CFO. And I think the feedback I got at the time is that the board of directors, the chairman, didn't feel I was quite ready, but they'd recognised what I could offer, and they didn't want to lose me. So I was really kind of touched by that.
Yeah, well, I've got to say, whenever we talk business and we talk technically, I'm always astounded. You are hands down the best finance guy I know. The best. There's no competition. The rigor with which you approach your work and how hard you work, and the experience that having that apprenticeship and work and developing your skills in a working environment have obviously availed you of. It's second to none.
Thank you very much.
I'm always sort of like, we said it on the way down here. I was like, I can't wait till, I can bring you on. We can boast that we've got Steve Orton, CIMA qualified, masters.
So I took up the position of vice CFO, stepped into that role in April 17, and the trust had just gone through a period of rapid growth. And I think as a result of that, there were quite a few issues. Cash was a problem. It was a big challenge. There were gaps in internal controls, policies and structures.
Like what? When you say gaps in internal controls? What would you expect to see and what wasn't there?
What I would expect to see walking into, at the time, a multi-academy trust of 8 schools, I would expect to see robust policies and procedures
surrounding
the public finances, the public money that's been spent around purchase orders, petty cash, credit card, audit, just your general internal control system, and it just wasn't there. There were too many gaps, and that led to a significant number of issues when we had an external audit and the management report. And it it
was qualified or
it was unqualified, but in an academy audit, you get your audit opinion, which is obviously based on whether it's a true or fair picture of the accounts, but also you get a management letter, which is the auditors telling the directors where they've got concerns, and a lot of them were around internal controls, and it was basic things: bank reconciliations not kept up to date, purchase orders not been raised, credit card expenses not been signed off, just kind of some fundamental basics that should be in place.
And so how did you go about resolving that? I mean, you walk in and you're like, this is terrible. How did you, did you feel like it fell to you, or was it was it your senior? Was it the person you reported to? Were you like... I'll let that person do it, or did you just get stuck in and start resolving issues?
Well, I think joining at the same time as the new CFO, we had a lot of similar qualities, and we worked in a very similar way, and we just took it back to basics. So I worked very closely with the CFO. I'm talking about bank recs, credit cards. These are basic functions. So we just dealt with it. We had the staff in. We had away days. We talked through procedures. We published
training days.
We published policies. We provided pro formas.
So you literally wrote the book.
Yeah, wrote the book. And what we've also introduced is our own internal audit function as such. So we have an internal audit which is provided by an external company, but we also do it ourselves in-house as well, just for that extra kind of level of kind of assurance to the board. And over time, we've flushed out those issues on internal control, and we've got a budget of 50 million. We've got 15 schools, thousands of transactions going through a year. Things will not be perfect, but what we've got now is an internal framework of control that it's got inherent controls built in. We will pick up these issues. So
it's not so if something goes, if there is an omission, you know about it. It's not just sliding.
Yeah.
And that's important because people, I think what you're really getting down to at the end of the day when you're in your role, and why it's so important is people talk about teachers and how important teachers are, which of course they are. But actually, I would say this because I'm a finance guy, but it all begins and ends with the money.
Yeah.
And you're in charge of that 50 million. And so, so how does that work? They give that to you in tranches, and you allocate that, or they give it to specific departments. How does it?
So each school gets a funding allocation annually, and there's certain income streams that will come in, annually or quarterly, but your bulk of your funding comes in 12 instalments. And there's nothing overly complicated about school finance. 75% of your costs are on staffing. You look in a school, the most expensive asset in there is the teaching staff. They alone will be about 50% of your school budget. You then start looking at you can support staff, and you look at your non-pay costs. You've got utility bills. You have your kind of your rates. There'll be a charge levied to the trust. There's not a lot left to play with. Budget management in the school, it's not difficult, and it's about keeping it simple, not making it complicated for budget holders. If you've got a head of department, it might be a head of maths, they might have a budget for £2,000. They don't need to know lots of information that they're not bothered about accruals and prepayments. They don't need to know that. All they need to know is what have I got left to spend, and you make sure you've got controls around that's the spending of that money. Making sure that we can demonstrate value for money, and there's not an open checkbook, because ultimately at the end of the day it's public funds.
What value for money is value for money is in the technical definition of value for money, like economy, efficiency, effectiveness, all that sort
absolutely.
of stuff.
Yeah. So it's not just the cheapest. It's again it's that it's about the product, it's about the time, it's about the price, it's the whole package.
And I mean, we've spoken before, and you've said to me that when you report to the board, you maintain that level of simplicity, and they don't even see a balance sheet because it would be too complicated for them.
Yeah, and I think
maybe that's a bit unfair. Too complicated.
We in our trust we've got two subcommittees. So we've got an education committee and we've got a finance committee, and there's the main board. We've got some big hitters on our board, certainly in terms of the finance and business world, who would understand what a balance sheet is, but they've come from a background of industry and practice where the balance sheet means something different to what it does in a school. The most important item on that balance sheet in a school is cash, and we will do cash flow forecasts and we'll report that to the board. But what we won't do is produce balance sheets. It's not the most important thing for them to be looking at. It's around the sustainability and the kind of the financial viability of the trust.
And that comes down to cash flow rather than...
Absolutely.
Okay.
So, in a typical report, to the board, I'll be presenting the management accounts for the period, highlighting any variances, any issues, any concerns, any risks to delivering on the budget. I'd also then present a 4-year plan, where we're kind of highlighting the future financial landscape, and again highlighting what the risk areas are, opportunities for kind of investment, so on and so forth, and then cash. So we're doing cash flow forecasting, highlighting any kind of pinch points. But again, in a school, generally your cash is, your income comes in 12 instalments, and you're spending it in almost 12.
And if 75% of your cost is payroll, then that must make simplify it up a little bit. And so, how is a school funded? You say it comes in 12-month instalments. How do you apply for that? How do they judge it? How does that work?
So a school can be funded in one of two ways. One is on their previous year student numbers, and one is on their current year student numbers. And within those funding mechanisms, there's different factors. So each student comes with a basic level of funding, and that's called ORPU. And then there's other factors then that top up that funding. So it could be, if you're in a deprived area, there'll be an additional allocation for that. If you've got a lot of students, they've got additional needs.
If the school's in a deprived area, or if that individual comes from a deprived area.
If that learner's in a postcode. So your kind of funding's delivered from there. But the actual method of funding in terms of previous years and current year numbers can have a big impact on a school and a trust's finances. So in our trust, we've got one particular school who joined the trust. It wasn't performing particularly well. It was requires improvement Ofsted rating, and it had a lot of students that were kind of leaving. Our trustees came in, turned it round. It's starting to perform much better in terms of attainment, and as a result of that, the students' numbers are coming back. So we've got year groups leaving in the upper end of the school of maybe 80, and then we've got year groups coming in year 7 of perhaps 200. So that's a huge growth for that school. But they're funded on their previous year's numbers. And to put that into context, for this year, they're only funded for 4 out of every 5 learners. So 20% of the students in that school, they're not funded for. Yet they've still got to pay for a teacher to be in front of the class. They've still got to pay for the materials, for the teaching assistants, for the overheads of the school.
For everything.
So, so it's very very challenging. And we've put a business case into the funding body to try and change that.
And who decides whether they're funded on the current or previous year? Is that a historical legacy thing that just happens over time?
So generally, if a school's current year funded on their current year pupil numbers, it's generally because they're either a new school and they're kind of building up their year groups, or because they're going through a period of significant growth.
Okay.
But obviously, what the Department for Education will do, along with the funding body, is they'll look at the wider context and not just the individual school. So they'll look at the financial position of the trust. Obviously, one of the benefits of being in the trust is that you're stronger as an entity as a whole rather than your individual operational units. They'll look at what reserves you've got. They'll look at other schools that might be in a different position. So you might have a school that's got numbers that are reducing, and you've almost overfunded. And they'll look at thresholds.
And can you surrender funding? Trends. Could you surrender funding between schools? So say if you've got a surplus in one school because they were funded on because they've lost a lot of students recently and someone's gained a lot, would that ever come into?
I mean that happens indirectly. So we report on each school as a separate business unit, but we are only one.
Next question. But
we are one entity.
Yeah.
So each school in the MAT is almost underwriting other schools. We just have one in terms of the company's house, HMRC. We are one entity.
But you have all of these different 13, is it?
15.
You have 15 different revenue and cost centres, and if one's in surplus and one's in deficit, it's all the same. Yeah. At the end of the day, it's all the same part. Yes. So you report on all of those individual schools and consolidate them at year end? Or?
Yeah. So when we report to the board, we report in 2 levels. We report on individual units and on the consolidated position. In terms of the year-end accounts, it's consolidated accounts, and we have a note in our financial statements that breaks down the reserves per school. And obviously what we have in our trust is reserved targets for each individual school that we've based around risk, so that the trust as a whole has sufficient reserves to continue to operate as a going concern.
Okay. And you said a minute ago, it wasn't this school that wasn't performing very well that entered the trust. I've got two questions surrounding that. First one, how does a school just enter a trust? And the second one would be, you drew a direct correlation between an uptick in the sort of academic performance and attainment of that school and the number of students. But my understanding of schools is that you just go to the one that's in your catchment area, but you would definitely draw that line between a school performing well and students choosing it.
I think in terms of that, it depends on where the school is. So the school I'm talking about, there's a couple of secondary schools in close proximity.
Right.
In generally, what parents would do, they would look at the schools that are in their catchment, and if there's a school that's not performing very well and there's a school that's performing well, the parents are going to send the kids to the high performing school. And again, if you can improve the school performance, improve the outcomes and the attainment, then obviously the demand for pupils wanting to go there will naturally follow.
And do you think the improvement in the improvement in educational standard of a school can be directly correlated with the funding they've got?
Absolutely. If a school, again, I'm going to talk about the school in our trust that's going through this period of significant growth and that are effectively underfunded or only funded for 80% of the pupils. They've got non-teaching specialists teaching lessons. So they've got effectively teaching assistants having to teach science and maths because they can't afford.
That as a parent, you're someone's parent. You're sending them to school. You entrust your child to this state. It's supposed to be an equal opportunity for all, and you've got this problem caused by either what is it caused by? Consistent loss making. So they've been given funding at some point, and they've over budgeted, overspent, not tracked it properly, not controlled it. Then they've got running deficits, and then they get hit with poor intake, and they've got no students and no funding, and that's all like this that all combines in one horrible 2 or 3 years.
Absolutely, yeah. If I one of the things that our chief executive always talked about, if you've got a school that's failing educationally, the finances are nearly always failing as well. The two are hand in hand.
So more important than teachers, almost, maybe not almost, maybe definitely, is the people you've got administering in charge and in charge of the financials. As
I mentioned before, school budgets are under significant pressure, but school finance isn't complicated. But what all schools and what all MATs need is that absolute...
MATs, saying MATs, what's MATs?
Sorry, multi-academy trust.
Right, sorry.
But what all schools and what all MATs need is absolute clarity on budgets.
And you zero-based yours, didn't you?
We zero-based it this year. And again, if you look at, go back to what is in a school budget, well, you're staffing, 75% of your costs. And before you start an academic year, a school should know what the staffing structures need to be. They should know how many teachers they need to teach different lessons. They should know what admin staff they need. You shouldn't have lots of change during the year unless something, perhaps maternity or you've got long-term sickness. You then take off again your fixed costs, or what I call your semi-fixed costs, things that you haven't really got control of in a year, and the discretional spend there's not a lot left. So it's not difficult to communicate, to liaise with budget holders and ask them to provide you with a budget that meets their needs. And I think, in the trusts that I've worked in, this is something that I've introduced both times now. Beforehand, at both trusts, these budgets for your your non-pay, your curriculum departments were just based on a formula. So it was X students that were teaching X many periods across a year or a period. Therefore, that's the budget that you need. And it bears no resemblance to what the actual need is for that curriculum. There might be a weighting towards a particular area, such as science. There might have more kind of consumables. So we scrapped all that and we said, right, you tell us
to the head of a department.
You tell, and we gave them some training. We brought them in for a briefing. We talked about the wider financial environment that we're operating in, the pressure points, what their responsibilities are as budget holders, and really kind of gave.
So you squared that. So you squared them away.
And we kind of gave them that almost that autonomy to be a budget holder, and we said, you tell us the resources that you need to deliver your curriculum. You tell us what you need to meet your objectives, and you start to build that accountability. So if a budget holder has told you what they need to deliver, then you can hold them to that. You've asked for A, B, and C. You now need to deliver on that.
Right.
So there's no more coming back 6 months. Oh well, I need to buy this now. I've got no money left. Well, was it in your plan? Why didn't you plan for it?
And if you get to that point and you're saying, what are you saying as the CFO of that company? The maths teacher comes back and he's like, Timmy's got no maths books because 4 out of 5 people, 20% of these kids aren't funded. He can't get his maths books. Do you say, well, was it in your budget?
No, because I'm naturally a very prudent person. So what I would do is I'd build a contingency into my budget,
right?
And I would again I perhaps have different levels of contingencies, and budgeting's not a science. Although it shouldn't be difficult, things happen in a school. From one day to the next, things are missed. It's not a science. So it's important to have that separate pot of money.
And that's how you approach it.
For
you
things
go,
that are missed.
There's my 12 months funding. There's my staff costs. There's my semi-fixed. There's the discretionary spend, and built into that is my slush fund.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nice. And they go away. And every year they you zero base the budget, and you say, what is it now?
Yeah, and once you've done it the first year, the second year becomes much simpler for the budget holders because.
And they must enjoy that. They must enjoy
I think they do.
Having a say over what goes into their teaching.
They've got a voice in the process. They're given the opportunity.
And if it's wrong, it's their fault.
Absolutely. Yeah. But what we're also doing is giving them an opportunity to develop their departments and develop their curriculum. So we're not going to give them the same money they've had each year. If you think you can do something different to enhance the experience for the learners, boost your attainment, then you tell us. You give us that blue sky thinking, and if we can allocate the budget funds for it, then we can do it. If you don't ask, you don't get. So it's allowing that innovation to come from the budget holders.
That all sounds really, really beautiful. So now I'm going to bring you back to something controversial, which is the rising, the revaluation of the teacher pension and the rise in teachers' pensions. So you painted a picture. Not that you've painted a picture. You've been straight about schools in multi-academy trusts, building up deficits, cash being king. That in some instances, whether you, particularly those where you are funded based on your prior year, you can run into big deficits quickly, which are linked to attainment levels, and you go around in that vicious circle. And now it seems like they are increasing. And that's not, I'm not slating teachers, but they seem like they're increasing the pension contributions for teachers, and that is funded. That's all out of the same pot. That's funded by the same money. So we're taking a school, let's say, where 20% of the kids aren't funded, and then we're saying, oh, and by the way, we're contributing, and the employer pension contribution for teachers is increasing, and it's not increasing in line with inflation. It's like it's being hiked.
Absolutely. So
talk to explain it.
So teachers, multi-academy trusts generally follow the national terms and conditions for teachers. So teachers are all part of a teacher's pension scheme, and the employee contribution rate for that is 16.48%.
16.48% for teachers.
For teachers,
So
that's the employee contribution to that pension, and it's been at that level for 3 years now. So there's been an actuary valuation, and because of the deficit on that pension scheme, the contribution rate for the employer is increasing to 23.6% from September.
23%.
23.6. So it's over a 40% increase. Now,
so the pension's in deficit, so they can't meet their obligations or their future obligations. Yeah. And so they're just saying to schools, you're going to have to pay in at 40% more.
That's what the Teachers' Pension Agency is saying. Now the Department for Education have, well, what they're doing for the next, until 2020 is they're going to fund that increase. Now, my concern as CFO is what about after 2020? Because this is a significant increase to schools, and if it isn't funded, then pretty much every school in the country is going to be bankrupt. When we did our...
So they're going to have to fund it?
The money's going to have to come from somewhere. If schools are left
Taxpayers. I hate this state.
Schools won't be able to meet that shortfall. There's always fat in the system. There's always areas where you can do things more efficiently. There's always savings to be had, but because schools have been under a lot of pressure, real term funding has been cut by 10% plus. The low hanging fruit's been picked. We're down to kind of the bare bones.
And so you can see a real crisis coming in the next couple of years, unless the DfE pick up the slack that's been forced upon them.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, you look at the picture across the country.
High?
There's a lot of demand on the public purse. It's not just schools and education. It's the NHS, police.
Yeah, and it sort of brings me round to my general philosophical view that I don't believe the state should be intervening so much in society. I'm a bit of an objectivist like that, but that's a different conversation, and probably one that will not be very popular. But so, do you see? I mean, I don't know whether you feel like you can comment, but do you, you've got kids, you're picking a school, you just say, we're going to a normal state school that's in the mainstream, or do you say we can go to an academy trust? I just need to check the following. Where would you draw the line? And if you're looking at a parent, I'm just about to have a baby in a few years, I'll come and chat to you. What do you say? When they come to you and say, listen, I'm thinking about sending my kid to X, Y, and Z school over the way. I've heard they're an academy trust. What should be my talk? What are the talking points? What are my concerns? Help me out. Am I making a good choice?
I mean, I've not worked for a school that's sat under the local authority control, so I can't comment too much on that. But again, if I'm going to talk about the two trusts that I've been in, and what they have got is a lot of highly skilled professional people that are giving lots of support to schools locally. If you're part of a local authority, the school improvement team or the school improvement opportunities that a school may have had would in the main be limited to the resources within the school. The two trusts I've worked at, they've got directors of standards, they've got Ofsted inspectors, they've got people with bags of experience from not just one school, from lots of different schools. It's a grouping of experts coming together for the greater good, and I think it's early days for multi-academy trusts, but certainly in the two I've worked in, they've got a track record of turning around failing schools.
And you think that is because they get that financial freedom, and people like yourself can say to a department head, you decide your budget. Here's what you can work with. Here are the pain points. You decide. And then they've got the funds to say to people like yourself, come and work for us. Mm-hmm. We can pay your market. We can pay your market rate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's very much professionalised the sector. I think, and I'm a CIMA qualified accountant. If you go back 5 years, you wouldn't have probably had qualified accountants in schools. You would have probably a school business manager managing the purse strings.
And who would that person be? When I think of that, and you say a school business manager, I think of the kind of people that work in back behind the office. When we went to Brockington College, they were sort of somebody's mum.
Yeah, and these people are experienced of working in schools, and they've got a lot of good qualities and good skills, but they're not accountants, and they haven't got that kind of wider understanding of risk and controls, and the requirement for forecasting and all of the kind of the technical side of things. Even like recruiting and deferring, or anything like that.
Yeah,
because that's not their background. They're not come from an accountancy background. They've come from, if I could explain
an admin
it.
background.
Yeah. Well,
we come across it in private. When I'm working with clients, we'll come across a business and you'll say, so bookkeeper? Oh, it's my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not bookkeeping. They're doing the admin.
Mm-hmm.
And even when you've gone in and taught them the value of bookkeeping
mm-hmm.
as the cornerstone of your financial information, those guys immediately tend to want to go, okay, great. Now I have a better understanding of it. I'll give it back to my partner.
I mean, I don't want to undervalue the role that school business managers play, and I think if I was to explain it to someone outside of the sector, I'd probably talk using the job title operations manager.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of managing the HR functions, the IT, the site, the finance, catering, cleaning. They've got a massive remit
scope, yeah.
But they're not expert in any of those fields. So if they're producing a set of accounts, but it's going to be fairly basic, almost cash accounting possibly, and there's going to be limitations on kind of again on the awareness of risk and ability to forecast.
So you're talking a lot about that. You're talking a lot about the awareness of risk. Give me some examples. What when you walk into school and you're like, okay, here are the I can see that about to happen, or here's my risk forecast. Here's my appraisal.
Well, what we do.
What are you frightened of?
I'm frightened of. I don't know. Frightened of what I don't know. When I produce my accounts, I do a 4-year financial plan for each school.
15 schools, 4-year financial plan.
Because for me, the big risk is not this year. It's not necessarily next year. It's the year after. And I think up until before kind of Matts were kind of born, schools just operated in kind of 1-year cycles, and a lot of things can change from 1 year to the next in school. Pupil numbers, there could be a big increase, there could be a big decrease. Pension contributions we've spoke about, inflation. There's been in recent years increases to national insurance, apprenticeship levy. It's constantly changing. The financial climate is changing, and if you just take your eye off the ball and keep going in 1 year cycles, then you will come to a point where you've got a big shortfall, you've got a big gap to make, and that's my biggest kind of risk, and it's keeping on top of the financial pressures, the financial constraints, and always knowing what the future kind of financial landscape looks like.
And the fact that you've gone into those multi-academy trusts and they have run big deficits would sort of support that theory that they were running in 1 year cycles and came up against something they didn't see and didn't in that moment didn't have the time to react and put it right.
Yeah. So what we're doing in my trust now is again we're doing these 4-year plans, and the approach we're taking is very much around prudency. So we've made assumptions around pension increases, inflation, pay awards, those kind of things. So when we get to those years, we can plan and we can be more proactive in the reaction to it, instead of getting 6 months before the start of the new financial year and having to make a raft of cuts and savings. We do it naturally and we do it organically as we move forward in time, and we know where the pinch points and the pressure points are.
And what do those tend to be? Hit me.
Well, again, 75% is staff costs, so it's all around your staff. Pay awards, pension contributions, and that's the two biggies. Particularly if they're unfunded, but pupil numbers. If you can have a good control of your staffing costs in a school, you won't go far wrong. What we do each month is we spend a lot of time working with heads of schools, working with school business managers, looking at the staffing, making sure that we've always got in our forecasting tools the right staff on the right pay points, the right pay grade, the right number of working hours. You keep on top of that, you don't go far.
Yeah, and I think I hear you talk about all that, and it fascinates me, and you obviously know your stuff. But what really gets me, I had this conversation today with a guy who was like, "Oh, you seem to really enjoy your job," and I was like, "Yeah, well, what I love is not necessarily, the technical accounting. It's everything that's moving. It's the environment in which we are moving, and it's all software for me.
Yeah.
It's all that you've got the progression of AI in the space. Cloud accounting is now ascended. It's not even happening. It's happened. And if you're not, and for me, if you're a small business sitting on a Sage system, I won't say Sage, perfectly adequate software, but if you're sitting on a desktop software system that's on a local machine, you're already too far behind. So what tools and softwares do you use to manage that? Because assets are one thing. You've got your human resources. You've got all of those assets. What tools are you using to leverage them for value? I
think generally schools again are probably a little bit behind the curve on innovation in terms of kind of IT and your kind of your software infrastructures. Again, I'm going to apologise for keep coming back to my trust, but we've got very old-fashioned paper-based systems. We've got some. In terms of the IT infrastructure, it's cloud-based. I can access all my files from wherever I am. But we've still got people writing out a manual order requisition, somebody keying it into a system, it going to somebody else to sign. We're just passing paper around the organisation. And there's a lot of value, a lot of efficiencies to be had in automating those processes. And that's where we need to be developing as a trust and as a sector. We're just looking to have an upgrade on our accounting system. We use a software company called PS Financials, which is pretty much the market leader in academies. It's very good at multi-location reporting, and what that will allow us to do is to automate the ordering process. So all the authorization will become electronic, and certainly when you've got staff at different sites, different offices, that's going to be very, very powerful for us. And
do you delegate those authorizations? So you could say to the business manager at one school, you can sign off a PO, or do you want all of those coming to you so you can go, right, well, I've got all of your budgets, I'm going to decide.
Right, so what we have is a scheme of delegations that sets out the framework for authorization.
And did you build that when you came in?
Yeah, well, not in isolation, but with the executive team. And obviously what we had to consider was the financial environment that we're operating within. So our delegations are probably a little bit tighter than what you'd expect to see in some academies, and certainly as our financial position improves, we may look to relax them. So what we have, anything under £1,000 can be signed within a school by head teacher, budget holder, head of department. Once it goes over £1,000, then we start to move into more central based authorisation. So it could be the executive head, it could be myself, CFO, it could be one of the management accountants we've got in the team. It could be the chief operations officer. It all depends on what the budget is and what the value is. So we've got that detailed level of
and how's that getting to you at the minute? So a purchase order comes through to you for $5,000. Does it come to you on an email? Does it come to you?
Yeah, generally it will come through on an email. Right. So someone would have scanned a paper copy, and then I've either got to reply by email for the school to print and attach to the paper copy, or I might print it, sign it, scan it back. It's all very, very manual. The new system, all of the authorization.
The new system.
So
and who is that?
It's still PS Financials. It's just an upgrade to the latest version.
Okay, right.
So you'll have an administrator in the school would key an order into the system, and it would go round to each individual who need to authorize it electronically. And those are the benefits of the upgrade. So we'll have a dashboard for budget holders or for heads of schools to look at real live financial information instead of waiting for kind of monthly accounts to come out.
That's what you want, isn't it? You want that real time information. Absolutely. So people can see it at a glance. That's where I am.
Yeah.
And in business, that's where I am. I can take this much money out.
And I imagine that's almost standard in some businesses now. We are very much behind, certainly in terms of the financial systems.
Yeah. I think the bigger you get, the harder it is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I saw that today with this client I've got, e-shops in lots of different parts of the world, different currencies, different bank accounts. Now, so I think the larger you are, the harder it is to automate. But it's definitely there, and especially, and we put all of our clients on zero, so we are completely cloud based. And I met with an accountant. We were doing a handover. I met with her, and she said to me, she's a little bit older than me, and she sort of boasted that she was going all cloud accounting, and we're moving all of our clients to zero. And it's like, you should have done that 5 years ago.
Yeah,
that's where it was. And now, and that's what I love about what we do at Linford Gray and what I'm doing, is that we're always searching that next stage. We will be early adopters on that tech, and that's where I get my jollies on the old, because it simples everything everything up so much, and then you're not relying on people, you're relying on systems.
Absolutely. And what I want in my trust is, I don't want people wasting time pushing paper around the organisation. I want them adding value. I want them looking at what we're ordering. Is that the best price? Is that the right product? Can we get it cheaper? Is there another school down the road that needs it as well? Can we join our bargaining power? That's where we get the value. You're not
and do you see paper. That a lot? I mean, we talk about this. We talk about people we know from school, and we're like, hey, he's a really good guy, but he's completely, he lives at home. He's got no ambition. That's just him. But you're a driven guy. Do you see that in your organisation? Are people driven, or are they just there for the paycheck and going home at 4?
I think in any business, in any sector, you're going to have that mix.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
In our trust, I sit in the central offices, and we've got in the central function, we've got data, we've got HR, we've got finance, we've got IT, we've got estates, and it's quite a young team, but what we have is a highly motivated and highly dedicated team. We have people that come in early, stay late, working,
but that's probably because they see you
hours
doing
over and above.
I think get up at the crack. You talk to me about getting up, and I'm like, God damn, Steve gets up early, and I'm not, and I don't get up late, but you're up early. So they must, and you stay late. We've been on the phone in the car, being like, where are you? Oh, I'm just come back from work. Yeah, me too. And it's 9 o'clock at night, and you're gonna go home, get something to eat, and then sit on your laptop for another 2 hours, and you're gonna, it's gonna be 5-6 hours asleep, and then you're back up and doing it. But I'm sure in those organisations where it's not. You've not got 100 people beneath you. You've got, maybe 10. I don't know. How many have you got beneath? How many people working?
I don't know. Lots. Yeah, lots. Indirectly.
Yeah. But your finance team.
In terms of my central team, there's 8 of us in the central finance
team.
They
must see you doing that and be like, and follow their leader.
Yeah, it's about setting example and driving standards. But I think again in my trust, we have got a lot of people that genuinely want to do a good job. We've got people that. And I think this is one of my motivations. It's easy to forget what you're working for. When you're in an office, you don't see kids and learners on it day in day out. But actually knowing that what you're doing actually is having an impact on young people's lives.
Yeah, on that.
Giving them opportunities is quite rewarding. And I think
and unsung, like people. I'm not denigrating. Teachers are teachers at all, but teachers are the fully sung heroes. Whenever you hear people speaking about teachers, the first thing out of their mouth is what a fantastic job they do.
Absolutely.
How hard they work and how challenging it is to work in that environment, and it 100% is true. But you guys are the sort of the Jerry Maguires. Your back, your arm is in the corner of the photo. Yeah. Nobody really knows what, and that's probably grounded in a lack of ability to understand as well exactly what you do. But as you said, if there is a problem with the level of academic attainment in a school, there's typically a problem with the finances. You guys are the unsung heroes.
And it's not just finance. It's any support function in a school, whether it's in a central team or in the school itself. Teachers are on the front line. They do an amazing job. They've got a very difficult job. Very challenging job.
Can you imagine that being a teaching assistant, then someone going, right, listen, we're 20% down this year, so why don't you just get up and teach some Pythagoras theorem? Oh, okay, yeah.
but what the support staff do is provide the foundations for the teachers to deliver. And it could be something as simple as taking the burden away of ordering some goods for them. Having someone in the office that will look after it for them. It could be helping with the recruitment, getting the right people in. It could be providing the accounts, the right financial information to help the school plan. Every member of the support team, whatever role they're doing, they all play a key part. And I think you do feel that it's quite a special place to work, not just in my trust, in education in general. And I think you really do get that kind of wider sense of purpose.
Purpose is the word I was about to say. I live my life by purpose. Have to be at something that is bigger than yourself and driving for something. And that kind of environment where you're looking at the lives of children and saying, I'm making a difference. And it maybe, and it's coming from here and trickling down and it's all, and it can be seen in various places, but I'm making a difference. And these kids are getting something, that I'm delivering, or that I'm at least a part of helping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Delivering. Anyway, we've got to go.
Steak.
That's it. Steak night, mate night. Yeah. Oh, we're late. Right. Let's wrap it up.
Okay.
Nice one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.